Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice at UTA and our video series in which we get to know our faculty and staff. I am pleased today to be joined by Professor Zarita Hall. How are you?
I am great. How are you doing today?
Fine, thanks. All right, so Professor Hall, can you tell us a bit about your education and your career in criminal justice?
Yes. Well, I started out with an undergraduate degree in criminal justice from a little college in a little town in Monroe, Louisiana, called the University of Louisiana at Monroe. It's changed its name to that. I cannot even think of what it was called back then. But yes, it's ULM now. I also am a proud graduate of UT Arlington, with a social work degree from the master's program. I've also gone through a doctorate program in seminary. I'm a crisis reentry counselor, well, certification in it. I've still speaking of education. I like to include this as part of my education. I'm also a licensed chaplain. Um, Part of my education will also include, and going into my career, working as a parole officer. And I'll kind of back up a little bit. But working as a parole officer, you have so many opportunities to further your education while you're there. And that's not necessarily with a degree or anything, but there is not one class parole offered. The state of Texas, through the parole system, offered that I did not take. So I was literally certified to do everything parole had to offer. Um, on paper, I like to always say I look absolutely wonderful on paper, just because I've gone through every class, every training, every workshop, everything literally imaginable that that particular job had to offer. I've done it. I've stayed in it. Um, Still speaking of education, going into career again, I like to consider myself a life learner. So I'm always in somebody's workshop, somebody's class of doing something to make sure that my education is on point and actually relevant to what it is that we're teaching. So when it comes to my career, um, in my opinion, my career is not that long. I would say I've been in some part of law enforcement corrections for about, I started maybe in my early 20s. I'm 46 now, so you kind of do the math. But I like to preface my corrections and law enforcement career going back to teaching. I was a substitute teacher for Fort Worth and Arlington ISD, one of my very first real jobs, I like to say. And in that position, I got to be what's called a compliance teacher for Arlington ISD. And what a compliance teacher is, anytime faculty goes out, for maternity leave or they're sick or whatever the case may be, the district at that time, I don't know if they still do it now, but at that time, they still needed to put a permanent teacher in that position to make sure that the school was in compliance with the number of educators per students. Well, in that position, one of the jobs that I have, what was called the BIC teacher, BIC. And even on our college campus, as you know, we've been communicating lately, we actually have one of those offices here on campus. And that's the behavior improvement class for elementary schools. And I was that teacher. Had a fight the first day. Oh my goodness. And things, this was like over 20 years ago. So things were, and rules when it comes to putting hands on kids was totally different back then. And then I end up, working with those kids, and the class got turned around. Now imagine this, talking about corrections and law enforcement. This was a regular classroom with about maybe 4 or 5 students. These were little kids, like third, fourth, and fifth grade. And they were obviously the kids that had behavior issues, not necessarily mental issues, but behavior issues. And I noticed that the doors, the windows and the doors were taped up. No one can see in, no one can see out. And it gave me the idea of, like, why does this feel like mini jail for these little kids on a elementary school campus? They couldn't eat lunch with the other kids. They couldn't play, go to recess with the other kids. I had to take them separately. Well, I ended up gaining so much I don't like to say control, but for a lack of words, control with those students. And their behavior turned around. And so I remember convincing the principal, hey, let's try them to see if they can have lunch with other kids. It worked out perfectly. Let's see if they can go to recess with other kids. And so I'm very proud of that position to get those children acclimated into what I would like to consider real school, as opposed to mini jail inside of an elementary school. And one of my most startling experiences there, when it comes to law enforcement, there was this fifth grader. He was really, really tall. I don't know what he did. He wasn't in my class, but Fort Worth PD actually, or Arlington PD, whichever district I was working for, they actually came and arrested him on campus. I'd never in my life seen a real life police officer that handles adults come and arrest a child from school. And I think it was there that I started this quest for, I needed to know more. I needed to help. Something needed to be done. And I'm not saying they did it for bad reason. It was just heartbreaking to see this is a child and he's in handcuffs getting placed in the back of a police car. And I don't know what's going to happen to him. His mother wasn't there. He was crying, and it was just awful, you know. So early in my career, even before I got in law enforcement, I had that type of run-in, you know, just from an outsider looking in, and it sent me on this quest to learn. And from there, I was a corrections officer. I think probably I moved back to Louisiana as a corrections officer for a little while. And then moving back to Texas, that is when I started my career as a parole officer. So I was a parole officer for the state of Texas for about 10 years. Excuse me. And that's where I supervised the youngest person, the youngest person that I've supervised was maybe 19 years old. That was pretty heartbreaking as well. You know, me having a teenager, I could identify, you know, when I would see their parents, you know, come in the office with them. And I was the officer that didn't a lot of times allow family members in the office. But when it came to teenagers, a lot of times I would, because they're teenagers. They need help adjusting to life after prison, post-incarceration. There's a big responsibility. You're going to need some help. So with that, I've never supervised sex offenders. I've never supervised the mentally ill. Mine was primarily youth and females and that kind of thing. So, and again, these people had a plethora of problems related to drugs. Some of them did have mental illness, but that was not necessarily their primary issue. And so the entire structure of law and order, everything has its place. Everyone has a role in society. I think parole was such a good fit for me. Speaking of, you know, career wise, you know, again, this is post incarceration. I think parole officers are the one group of people that see it all. If you think about police officers, they see just what you've done right then, for the most part. They arrest you for what you did then. If you look at probation officers, they get you on the front end. In our classes, we talk about front end duties and back end duties. You know, probation see you before possibly you're going to prison. So they know this somewhat limited. You know, it's extensive but somewhat limited. You know, when you talk about judges, DAs, that kind of thing, they're interested in your history, but pretty much the negative parts of it, because they're trying to get a conviction, kind of thing. Your attorney, you know, will know an extensive history, but it's still somewhat limited. But when you come to parole, we have your entire history, and we get to work with you based on your history, not necessarily just what you've done. So whatever you've done in your past, to us, it doesn't matter. It's over. It's done. You've gone to prison. Let's help you rebuild this life. And so for me, that's just the type of person I am. Still speaking of career moves, one of the jobs that I've had, I was a family liaison for a nonprofit organization. And that was one of the coolest jobs I've ever had, looking at my educational background and some of the things that I've done career-wise. With this particular job, it allowed me to work with the youth as well as their family, and schools and communities had targeted these families as they were in trouble. They were touched by the system, as we like to call it, you know, the criminal justice system. And so I got a chance to come in and mend some families, set some order, speak up for their youth parole officer, or whatever the case may be. Even if it was an adult probation or parole officer involved, I got a chance to speak on the family's behalf. So to be able to be that middle person to help bridge bridges between the justice system and the family, that's always a big plus for me. So I've had, you know, a few different jobs, but those are the most memorable that I have. And obviously, here I am, one of the professors here on
Yeah.
this campus.
And we're very glad you are here. So speaking of that, what made you want to leave the field in criminal justice and teach full time with us?
Well, it came a point where it was literally just time. There's nothing negative that I can give you when it comes to switching a job, but it was literally time for a change. So at one point, I was teaching part-time and still full-time, being a parole officer, and looking at management, some of the rules and regulations we had to impose on our clients that, in my opinion, were somewhat, it was just a little bit too much. I was the type of officer that believed in doing things the right way, by the book, holding my clients to a standard. But then there's certain things that, I felt were kind of making it impossible. But then again, when I said it came a time, it was like, you come to a point in life where you feel there literally has to be a shift in where you go. And so, dealing with drug addicts on a regular basis, dealing with, prostitution every day, dealing with some type of problem. I just came to a point where it was, before it got to be a burnout, it was just time for me to make that switch. And plus, I felt, because of all my training, I have a lot to offer in this particular field. So it makes sense to come give my students all of my experience, all the information I have. I've opened them up to, being an officer, we're always at the jail. So we go on tours. The best way to bring a textbook to life is to give you as much real life experience, let you see what this is going to be like for you and the offender, kind of thing. So it made sense to come teach it now, as opposed to live it every day.
Right. And you teach a variety of classes for us.
I
For
do.
example, juvenile justice systems, ethics, institutional corrections, community corrections. Can you pick one of those and just tell our students a little bit about it and why you like it?
Well, I tell you what, I know you said one, and I'm trying to be obedient. Let's combine institutional corrections and community corrections together. Yes, let's do that. So, and everything I teach, I absolutely love. All of my classes are just interwoven together, but institutional corrections and community corrections specifically, I love those, is again because when it comes to the textbook, I have great authors for writers of the books that we use, but it's so very easy based on my experience, education, knowledge, that kind of thing. It's easy to bring those concepts to life. When we talk about community corrections, it could mean anything. And so in some of my classes, we actually have group assignments. Some students like it, some don't. But I know that if you go into community corrections, you must deal with people. You can't get around it. Working with institutional corrections, again, those people that are in there are going to come out and be your neighbors. You're going to shop with them at Walmart. So let's literally go take a look inside of the institution. And so again, with those two classes, it embodies everything that I know, everything that I'm about. It's just I don't want to use the word easy, but it's so easy because that has been my life for so long. And you get to learn real life concepts as to why things are the way they are. You see it on TV, but then when you actually go to it and touch it and handle it, when we go inside of, a private prison, when we go to Venus, you get to see what this private prison is teaching. Mm-hmm. It is amazing, some of the things that happen in this particular prison. We actually go to Huntsville, and we actually go to the death chamber, where that is the one prison in Texas where we execute. We actually are in that small room around that gurney where a needle is placed in an offender's arm, and you get to feel what that room is like. Some students can take it, some cannot. The warden is typically our tour guide and lets us know what this is like for him, kind of thing. So if I had to pick my favorite two, or the most interactive two, should I say, it would be the institutional corrections and the community corrections piece of it.
Excellent. All right, so final question, final topic. We'll dig into something even more challenging and timely for our students. Currently, it could be argued that police officers and others that work in the justice system, as you did before, are scrutinized more than ever. With the widespread availability of mobile devices and social media, every citizen seemingly can be an amateur news reporter. Officers across the nation have been guilty of brutality and abuse of power, and a fractured relationship with minority, racial, and ethnic groups in some cities has become even worse. So, Professor Hall, for you, two questions. One, why is working in the criminal justice still a great choice for our students? And then two, how should they approach the current increased scrutiny of those that work in criminal justice?
Well, for all the things that you said in your discourse just a few seconds ago, why is working in the criminal justice system still a great choice for our students? Simply because we, obviously for those reasons that you named, we need them. We need to turn out great people. Going back to the question you asked me previously, in my classes, I also teach ethics. And in our ethics for criminal justice, not ethics for law, but for criminal justice ethics, we get to break down and explore literally just what you explained. And when they get to see why the law is the way it is, what can they do to better? What can they do to better our society? This is why. It's simply because we need good police officers. We need good law enforcement. We need good judges. There's a section in one of our books that talks about good judging. What does that look like? So when you're in our justice system or working with our criminal justice system, it's a good thing that you get to come through us, the knowledgeable ones, the one that have the experience, the one that have a high standard of ethics in our own personal lives. So that's one of the things that I tell my students. Remember, whoever that judge is, whoever that police officer, before he puts that vest on, he's a person. What type of person are you? And if so, if we can get a chance to get in our students' heads to maybe change some things, the way they've been thinking, that's all the more reason why you need to be in this system. Who is better to do it? And why should they approach the criminal justice system with all this scrutiny? Or how should they approach it? For the same reason. When you know you are a good officer, when you know you're a good person, when you know that there's no racism in you, at the same time being aware of your own biases, because we all have them, but learning how to keep those in check, learning how to be held accountable. This is how you go into your workday every day. I know that I'm not going in it for these reasons, for these horrible reasons, should we say. You're going to get scrutinized. There's an X on your back just because you are in law enforcement. That's the reality of where we live. However, we still have a job to do, and you have to go and face it head on. Know that you're doing the absolute very best for your community, for our families, for our children, and you have to leave the rest behind, period.
I think that's great. We've been telling our students this is not the time to run away from scrutiny.
Absolutely.
It's not the time to have police officers that are even more secretive, that maintain that so-called blue wall of silence more than ever. This is not the time to support officers that are not doing the right thing. Right. This is the time to get out.
Absolutely.
The ones that are doing the negative things, whether they're violating department policy or even in many cases committing crimes. It's time to get rid of them. So yeah, encouraging our students to live up to the highest professional standards, and at the core, treating them with kindness and respect is obviously what we want to do. And I appreciate the fact that that's how you instruct our students.
Absolutely.
It's very good. Is there anything else you might like to share as we say goodbye to our students?
I would like to say, while you are thinking about what it is that you want to do in this field, go out, start volunteering, go out, do ride-alongs, go out and get with whoever is doing that thing, see how they're doing it, see what they're doing with it, and you figure out, have those important conversations. How can I do this even better? No one's perfect. So if you go to an agency, if you go to, let's just say, if you go to pick a police department, whatever one you like to choose, and just ask to come shadow. Ask to come ride, ask to come see how, sit in on some meetings. What do you hear that's missing? Because even though I tell my students all the time, I'm not in the field anymore. That is over for me. I'm not giving any more UAs. I'm not checking your car. I'm not doing any of that stuff anymore. It's literally up to you now. So how you do your job is very key. Otherwise, why are you here? Why are you in college? And that would be for any major. If it's architect, okay, this person built this building this way. Okay, how can you make it better? How can you improve on it? We're living in a society where we have to be progressive. We have to keep moving forward. We cannot, if we stay the same, we're going to regress. So I would definitely encourage you to please not go for this particular major just because we're in the climate that we're in. But by all means, go for it and then get with those people to figure out how you can do a much better job when they're gone. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. Students and potential students, if you would like to learn more about Professor Hall, please take a look at our website, which is www.uta.edu/criminology, and you can look at our faculty list and find Professor Hall and additional information about her. She is also director of our junior and senior level honors society called Alpha Phi Sigma. All right, so please keep that in mind as you progress through the program as well. So thank you again, Professor Hall.
Thank you for having me, sir.
And to everyone, I say thank you and go Mavs.
Go Mavs.
Bye-bye.